What's up guys, welcome back to ProjektDori. In today's video we're going to be going over the front suspension as well as the front brake kit. So to start off the video, I'll go ahead and do an overview of everything that I bought and then we'll go ahead and jump in and install. So without further delay, let me show you all of the goodies that are going on Dori. So these are all the goodies that I bought for Dori's front end. Over here we have the Ridetech front suspension, of course for a 1956 Chevrolet Bel Air. And over here we have the 4-piston 12.19-inch rotor Wilwood brake kit. So I'll go ahead and go over the front suspension kit and what it all comes with. So I got 2 upper control arms, of course 2 lower control arms. I went ahead and opted in for the coilover strap versus air ride, and then also the 2-inch drop spindle. So the reason I wanted to do a full front suspension upgrade is that if you refer back to my first video, I really want a better drivability out of this car. So after making that decision and going down that rabbit hole of doing all my research, I stumbled upon Ridetech and I fell in love with their products, their engineering, and also their customer service. But most importantly, all of this stuff on the front end, as well as doing it in the rear, is going to give me that drivability that I'm looking for. Now I'll go ahead and jump over to the brakes. As I mentioned before, we got the 4-piston 12.19-inch rotor from Wilwood. In my previous video, I did mention how I wanted that 6-piston caliper because honestly they look freaking amazing. But with my suspension setup, they were about $1,000 more than just the regular 6-pistons. So I went ahead and opted down for the 4-piston with these rotors because that's ultimately going to give me the braking power that I needed. Now the one kind of hiccup that I had so far is now with these rotors and calipers, I need at least a 15-inch diameter wheel. Whereas what's on the car right now is a 14-inch. And I was kind of hoping I'd get by with those old wheels just to keep the car rolling. But since this setup's going to require a bigger wheel, I went ahead and ordered some new ones. And they're of course 15 inches in diameter and 8 inches wide. And I'm planning on running a 235/60, and based off my measurements, that should work just fine. Now with all this stuff on the front end, that's going to give me the handling, the braking, and the stance that I'm looking for. And now that I've gone over everything that's going to be going on the car, let's go ahead and jump in and putting this together. Alright guys, unfortunately due to technical difficulties, mainly with my camera, I lost all the footage of me taking everything out. But on the flip side, the good news is I got the driver's side front suspension components out, control arms, hub, and everything. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Ridetech control arms and get them all put together before we put them in the car. Alright guys, as you can imagine, there's not a lot for me to do on the control arms to put them together. Really all I have to do is put this ball joint on, and I'm going to slap them on the car. Alright, so we got the ball joint in the control arm, so I'm going to go and put it in and see what it looks like. Safety first. Alright guys, I got the control arm mounted on with the original hardware. It looks pretty badass and I'm excited to get everything going. One thing after checking this over, since using the original hardware, you can see that the original bolt that was on here is not long enough. So you can see there's no threads poking out, and I at least want to have 2 threads coming out. Whereas over here, you can see the bolt is long enough, and over here, once again, it's not. So there's 2 of them that aren't quite long enough for what I want. So I actually went ahead and ordered some of these 7/16 20 by 2 inches to go ahead and get the thread length that I wanted. Alright guys, now that we've got the lower control arm, I'm going to go ahead and assemble this coilover before I pop it in. Really quick and really simple. Alright guys, now my coilover's together. Of course it's not adjusted to ride height, but we'll do that later on. Alright guys, so let me go ahead and install this bad boy. I just finished putting it in. Looks really good. Fits nice. I haven't tightened it down yet. Of course, we'll do that at the end. Alright, now that the lower control arm and the coilover are both in, I'm going to go ahead and attach the coilover to the lower control arm. Then I'll bolt it in and torque it down. I just finished torquing it down, so we're good to go. And of course, no first install usually goes smooth. So I didn't tighten down the coilover enough, so right now I can't actually spin the adjustment. So I'm gonna have to go back, take it off, and redo it. Alright guys, take 2 of putting this in. Alright, now we're in. Alright guys, went ahead and took the liberty to go ahead and put the ball joint in the upper control arm. Then I ended up having to take the upper ball joint off to get this control arm through. But I'll go ahead and put that back on before I start doing anything else. Alright guys, made some good progress today so far. Not stopping for the day, but I do want to go ahead and give you a pan over to see what's done so far. Now you can see the upper and lower control arm with the coilover with all of its glory. And man, I think it looks freaking awesome. Now that both control arms are in and the coilover, I'm going to go ahead and install the hub, and then from there we'll move on to the brakes. Alright, now I got my 2-inch drop spindle. We'll go ahead and put this on, torque it down, and then start on the brakes. Alright guys, the hub is all hooked up, spins around nicely. There is a gap here, but it's supposed to be there, so don't worry. Now that this is on, I'll go ahead and do the finishing touches, and then we'll move on to the brake kit. The first step in putting these brakes on was putting on the caliper bracket onto the spindle. I went ahead and mounted it fully, torquing these bolts down to 55 foot-pounds and putting some red Loctite on. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for today. Been working on Dory for about 10 hours now. You guys all saw what I did. Took off all the old front suspension on the driver's side, and now put everything back. So tomorrow I'm going to come back in, once again get cracking on to start working on the brakes and get everything done. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.